Yo, what's up, dog? I heard you like color bass. If that's the case, then you're in the right place. That just rhymed. Whoa, that was unintentional. But anyways, I'm going to be showing you all the methods to make color basses that I know of. To make color bass, we first need a sound to colorize. In this case, I just have a pretty classic growl. You can just look at the preset here. This is what it sounds like. Feel free to copy as well, scroll through them. I will be showing you first all the versions of color basses that we have. This is our dry sound. Pretty nice, pretty nice. This is the Resonator method. This is the Convolver method. Here's the Vocoder method. Here is the pitch map method. Alright, so the first method that I showed you is a Resonator method. And if you don't know, FL Studio actually has a Resonator. And this is something that I didn't know for a while. It's very useful and it's default with your FL Studio, so you should have it if you have FL Studio. It's actually in the patcher, and if you click on presets, you can actually scroll down and you'll find a Resonator. Very useful for making colorful basses because, you know, if you want to resonate certain frequencies, this is how you do it. So you might be wondering, how do I pick which frequencies to resonate? And that's a good question. What you want to do is actually create a MIDI out. And to do that, you can actually just click the MIDI out button here. And this MIDI out should be set to port 0. And then you can basically draw in any notes that you want here, as long as there's not two of the same. But you can pitch it all the way up and all the way down, wherever you want it to be. In this case, we are using D sharp minor. So what I'm gonna do is actually grab the minor pentatonic here and then put it on D sharp. I like to use minor pentatonic because it just sounds good with color bass. Feel free to use whatever notes, experiment. But in this case, I'm gonna be using D minor pentatonic. The next thing you wanna do is kind of spread these notes around. So I'm gonna pitch up the A sharp and the F sharp. So we have a nice even spread of notes. I forgot to mention, make sure the MIDI out is on the pattern that you are playing the sound on. Now, when we go back to our patcher, we can actually edit the settings here. So we have our feedback, our dry and wet. In some cases, you might want to mix in the dry a little bit, but what I'm doing is basically using track mixing 5 and then sending it to 4 and master. So I can essentially turn the volume up and down of the color bass and then mix it in with the original bass. But yeah, really just mess around with your feedback and dampening. Dampening is basically just a low pass. And then you can also change which octave your notes are being played on. And then one thing that I am doing, which is gonna probably benefit a lot, is cutting out the sub from your resonator, because if your resonator is resonating your sub, it's not gonna sound good. It's gonna either distort the shit out of your sound or not do anything. And it's gonna just not sound great. So make sure you EQ out that low before you send it to your mixing track. The next thing we have is our Convolver method. I think I prefer this one over the Resonator. It's obviously personal preference. What is a Convolver? Well, a Convolver basically allows you to take one sound and use it as a reverb for another sound. And that is probably gonna sound really weird because it's like, what the heck? That doesn't make any sense. How does a sound become a reverb itself? It's simulating a reverb based off of another sound. Usually what that sound will be is some type of impact, for example, in a church, or like if we even look at the presets here, we can see warehouse, downstairs hallway, and there's tons of them. So if I wanted the sound to sound like it's playing in the forest, I could click forest. Essentially, it would sound like it's being played in a forest. One of the things that is kind of overlooked with convolvers is their ability to kind of insert harmonics into a reverb. By turning down the decay on the reverb to basically none, you can essentially cause the sound to reverberate only harmonic frequencies and then mix it with the dry, and then you get a color base. You might be wondering, like, what preset is this? How do I choose the sound that's going to be in here? And in this case, it's actually just a single sound that's played through Serum. And I'll show you how to make it. Let's use our pentatonic minor again, and then make it really, really short. So basically just like this. That's pretty much all it is. And you can also, if you want, you know, pitch some notes down again. Okay, so that sounds good to me. Now what we're gonna do is put that pattern down. We're gonna solo it and then render it out. Okay, so once you have it rendered out, take it from wherever it was saved, and then you go into your Convolver, and you basically just drag and drop it. If we play the sound again, you can hear that it's basically overlapping that sound. Now you can hear this example, it's like very, very long. Like the sound goes on for much longer than the actual bass. So what you can do is click this button here, and this will basically just add a kind of decay to it. And there you go. You have a colorful bass. Now, a couple things that you can do, and in this case, I have my wet basically turned all the way up, is mess with the stereo width. So you can change the stereo width of your in sound and then the stereo width of your wet sound. You have your delay. Pretty self-explanatory. Self-convolve, which is basically going to become your decay. And it basically just convolves itself. Stretch is basically your pitch shifter. So this is what it would sound like if I played it at its default pitch. This is 1 octave up. And this is 1 octave down. And you can mess with those sounds to get a sound that you like. And one thing that I did add just in this case is a limiter with basically a hard clipper. And a hard clipper is just done by turning all 3 attack, release, and sustains down, and then dragging the ceiling to wherever I want to clip. And that's just making sure no harmonics are ringing out way too loud and blow out your eardrums. Same thing here is just taking out those low ends because they can be really nasty. Like that, they're completely distorted. Okay, so our second to last method is our Vocodex method, or vocoder. But I think Vocodex is a very, very versatile way to make color bases, and my go-to method personally. Just because of all the options you have, you can make so many different sounds, and there's so many different ways to alter your sound. So I would definitely recommend using the Vocodex method. If I had to choose one to use for the rest of my life, I would use it. The first thing you want to do is make a super saw within a serum. Like so. And that's basically just done by turning up the unison, very classic stuff. And then what you want to do is either take a MIDI out or draw in the notes, either or. I prefer using MIDI out just so I can use a Resonator and I can use a Vocodex in conjunction with each other without having to have 2 separate MIDI tracks. And if you do want to use the MIDI out, you do that by just taking your input port and setting it to 0 or whatever port you have your MIDI out on. And then what you do from there is basically just route that to some random track, doesn't matter which one. One thing you want to make sure is that the Vocodex is on the same mixing track as the super saw. If you don't do it like this, then you might run into some issues, so be warned. This is very important that you have this on 1 and this on 0. And that just is basically telling Vocodex, this is the signal that I want to resonate from, and that the signal that it's resonating from will be kind of side chained in, and that's just by taking an input here and turning it all the way down, so there is no actual sound being played. Okay, so I actually just made a completely new instance of Vocodex and did all the steps that I just told you to do, And this is what it will sound like by default. So already pretty color bassy. And one thing that you can do is turn this release and turn this knob down. I don't even know what it does, to be honest with you. But if you turn all these knobs down, it will follow kind of the gain more accurately and not have a whole bunch of reverb almost. And then this will basically change your pitch of the input. And you might say like, oh, that's gonna make it out of pitch, but actually it doesn't. So it'll never be out of key, it'll just resonate differently. So if I move it down like this, you can hear it pan through the resonant frequencies of our supersaw. And that's a really cool effect, and you can automate this and make some really cool sounds. Other things you can do is just mess with knobs. I don't know what this knob does. I don't know what this knob does. If you turn it up, it sounds like this. If you turn it down, it sounds like that. And somewhere in the middle is where you're gonna find a sweet spot. And there you go. That's how you make color bass in Vocoder. This is our last method. And again, I'm sorry, but it has to be included because it's a way to make color bass. And I told you I was going to make a tutorial on all the ways you can make color bass. So unfortunately, it has to be in here, but that would be pitch map, the pitch map method. I will boot up a new instance of pitch map like so. Go here, D sharp, pentatonic, minor, turn the purify up, turn the field down a little bit, threshold up, electrify up, and there you go. That's really all you have to do with pitch map. But like I said, if I had to choose one, I would go with Vocoder. I think it sounds just deeper and it has more character to it. Although one thing that is cool with pitch map is that you don't need to stay in the key that you wrote your bass line in. If I wanted to do F sharp pentatonic Egyptian, I could do that. Does it sound good? Not really, but I can, and it's technically in key, just because, you know, it's pitch map. Everything's in key in pitch map. Come on. Just like that, you know every single method to date that I know of making color bass. So go out there, make some color bass. Don't use pitch map. Just kidding. Use it if you want. I don't care. And have a good day.